Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You know, we the people shouldn't have to beg a presidential candidate to make appearances so we can know exactly what they're thinking. I mean, if a presidential candidate is running, seeking our votes, it's not enough to have the right to vote. You need to have the right to vote with knowledge. Now, the truth is, we know what Kamala Harris is. She's a Marxist Islamist. Her economic policies have been the most extreme, even more extreme than Bernie Sanders. That's not moderate. That's not little d Democrat. That's not even socialism. It is what it is. And now she will lie about them to the extent that her polling and surveys tell her she needs to lie about them. So you have an issue with Marxist Islamism plus character. She has a very low character. What do I mean by that? She knows she will say anything and do anything to get elected. And in this Marxist Islamism and low character, it is a defective trait that she shares with her media, with George Stephanopoulos, with Dana Bash. It's a defective trait she shares with all of MSNBC and CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the rest of the big government, Pravda, Al Jazeera, American media platforms. Deceit, lies, it's a pathology. The ends justify the means, as many communists have said, including Lenin. And that's exactly what's taking place. So we have people who say, when will she come out? When will she speak? But it's more than when will she come out? When will she speak? Which is very important. But when she does, do we believe her? That's the issue with flip-flopping. Flip-flopping means you're a liar. You either lied before or you're lying now. She hasn't had a change of worldview. She hasn't suddenly come upon facts or information or knowledge she didn't have before. She's a chameleon. She has a core belief system, But she's a chameleon in the sense that she will reveal them when she feels it's useful. She will conceal them when she feels it's useful. She will pretend she doesn't hold them anymore, or to the extent she held them, when she thinks it's useful to her gaining power. This is what autocrats do. And so I'm going to spend time right up to the moment of Election Day. For all of our affiliates, all of you listeners, wherever you may be, exposing this woman. And by the way, well, the fact that she's a woman and the fact that she's a minority, black, is very, very important to the Democrat Party and the media. It means nothing to Xi. It means nothing to Putin. It means nothing to Un. It means nothing to the Islamo-Nazis. It means nothing to the illegal aliens, the criminals on our streets. They could care less if she's a she or a he, if she's albino or black. It doesn't matter. It's the policies. And that's what should matter to you. Is she going to improve your life? Or is she going to make it miserable? Is she going to make our streets safer or more dangerous? Is she going to secure our border from fentanyl, from rapists, from illegal aliens, from murders? Or is she going to continue the Harris-Biden policies of today? I want to address several issues, but I want to start with one in particular. I said yesterday and before that the Harris-Walz ticket is the most anti-Semitic national ticket in American history. You know, it's a funny thing. Woodrow Wilson, you might think, who was one of the most horrible racists, a Democrat, a so-called progressive. He resegregated the civil service. He resegregated the military. So many things that he did, I wrote about in The Democrat Party Hates America. But he was not anti-Jewish. He put the first Jew on the Supreme Court. Interesting, isn't it? Strange, but interesting. Franklin Roosevelt didn't lift a finger for blacks and was anti-Jewish. What he did to blacks, not only wouldn't he meet with them for the most part, as I've told you before, in 1940, a bipartisan bill came to him from Congress to outlaw lynching, a federal law outlawing lynching, and he wouldn't sign it. And he was condemned by a number of prominent black athletes, as a matter of fact. But you wouldn't know it listening about FDR today. You wouldn't know about listening to LBJ about him today, that he was every bit as racist as Woodrow Wilson. Horrendous. So it is amazing when you hear that party talk about Donald Trump, who doesn't have a racist bone in his body, who's never done anything racist. All those years as an employer, as a developer, in entertainment, all those years. Kamala Harris, in my view, is an anti-Semite, and I'm going to demonstrate it. Tim Walz, in my view, is an anti-Semite. I don't care that she's married to a Jew. That is irrelevant. There are anti-Semites. There are Jew haters who are Jews. Just like there are Catholic haters who are Catholic, and on and on. They exist. It's a sickness, but they exist in every ethnicity and in every religion. The fact that you marry somebody who is this or that is of no consequence. It's you, your character, your substance, what's between your ears that matters. We have a piece here in the Daily Mail. Excuse me, that was a huge mistake. The Daily Wire. Most radical anti-Semitic ticket. Elise Stefanik slams Tim Walz for appearing with anti-Israel leader. Walz rubbed shoulders with Students for Justice in Palestine founder Hatim Bazian in 2019. By Cassie Akiva. Stefanik condemned Walz for rubbing shoulders with the founder of the National Students for Justice in Palestine, is another Hamas front group. During a 2019 event, Walz was photographed with the anti-Semite scholar and JSP founder Hatim Bazian during the Council on American Islamic Relations March 2019 event on challenging Islamophobia at Metropolitan State University in St. Paul, the Washington Free Beacon reported. So CAIR is a Hamas front group founded by Hamas that supported October 7th. It is a group with extremely close ties to Kamala Harris. Now let's just stop there. If we had a Republican candidate for president or vice president who had extremely close ties to the Ku Klux Klan, wouldn't that be the end of it? Wouldn't that be the end of it? This is why I say the media in America are filled with Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood supporting individuals, self-haters, anti-Americans, anti-Israel. It's who they are. And I will remind you that the New York Times was owned by a Jewish family, as it was covering up the Holocaust because Franklin Roosevelt wanted it covered up. Tim Walz condones and props up anti-Semites like the most dangerous professor in America, Hatem Bazian. Stefanik told the Daily Wire. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, that's the most radical anti-Semitic ticket in history. She's 100% correct. Walz reportedly opened the CAIR event and used his remarks to announce the formulation of an office to address Islamophobia in Minnesota. Bazian is also founder of the Anti-Israel American Muslims for Palestine, which is under investigation in Virginia for suspicions it finances terrorist activity, according to the Free Beacon. So these are the most vile, radical organizations with ties to these terrorist front groups that have connections to, involvement with, the Democrat candidates for president and vice president of the United States. The troubling anti-Semitic histories of CAIR and SJP have been well documented, especially since Hamas's October 7 massacre of Israelis. CAIR executive director Niwad Awad celebrated Hamas's attack, stating he was happy to see people breaking the siege and that Israel does not have the right to self-defense. Students for Justice in Palestine, we've talked about these groups, has been the driving force behind the anti-Israel encampments, the Hitler Youth movement, on college campuses, which have led to the harassment of Jewish students and the disruption of some college graduations, and they'll be back. They're going to be back in force. Both AMP and SJP were named in a May lawsuit filed in federal court, which accuses the groups of working to support Hamas, a U.S. designated terror organization, by acting as collaborators and propagandists, much like our media. Now, I want you to think about this. I want you to step back and think about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. The truth is, most Americans know very little about both of them. And the media want it that way. And Kamala Harris wants it that way. But over my dead body. Walz came under fire last week after it was revealed that he hosted extremist Islamist imam. There's another one. Assad Kaman. Multiple times. Zaman met with Walz's gubernatorial office as recently as May 2023. Zaman, who is the executive director of the Muslim American Society of Minnesota, has a history of sharing his Facebook page to share Hamas press releases, anti-Semitic blogs, and a link to a piece on a website for a 2013 pro-Adolf Hitler film, the Washington Examiner just reported. A pro-Adolf Hitler film, CAIR, Hamas, Students for Justice in Palestine. Who did the vetting of this man? Eric Holder. They knew all this. This is all publicly available. And Kamala Harris knew all this. She is close to many of the same organizations and has been. Now, more when I return, because you're not going to hear this from anybody else. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're living in unprecedented times. Every day we're seeing new breaking news. In fact, we're seeing challenges like we've never seen before. So in times like these, you need a solid foundation for your finances. And that's where diversification and gold come in. Gold has always been one of the ultimate safe havens in times of turmoil. When it comes to gold, I only trust one company, Advantage Gold. They're a 5-star American company that I recommend to you. They're experts in precious metals and specialize in helping Americans protect their money with gold and silver. You can even use an existing retirement savings with zero fees. Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000, and they'll send you a free gold investment kit to help you get started. Tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Help protect your wealth now with Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Let's continue, because you folks need to know this. It is the extremist, radical Islamists who attacked us on 9/11. The Muslim Brotherhood is the mothership. Most of these groups have some connection, direct or indirect, to the Muslim Brotherhood. Not all, but most. The ideology is the same. It's the same. Now, we lost 3,000 people. We lost 3,000 people. We remember September 11th every single year. We honor those who died, the firefighters, the police officer, the innocent people, civilians trying to help civilians, the heroes, the pilots, Central Pennsylvania, the Pentagon. We have this element now. I'm not talking about Arabs and Palestinians and Muslims. I'm talking about Islamists, radical, extremist Islamists. We have this element that now has a presence within the Democrat Party. It has a presence within the Democrat Party. It is playing footsie with organizations that are enemies from within. And nobody's going to stop me from telling the truth. Not Soros buying radio stations. Not station owners deciding they want to lighten up a little bit. Or program direct. Nobody is going to stop me from defending this country. Nobody. And speaking the truth. Technology's too advanced. You can't stop me. But I want to continue with this because we have a candidate for president and vice president who are dangerous to this country. I'll be right back. You know, we're living in strange times. All the news out there these days seems to be breaking news. The only thing that is certain is change. Regardless of the marketplace, and in these times of instability, many small investors turn to gold. It's been a bedrock of wealth preservation for millennia. And when I think of gold, I think of Advantage Gold. They're not just another precious metals company. They're true partners in helping Americans find financial stability. You know, Advantage Gold's experts get the relationship between politics and economics, and they can navigate you through these crazy times using gold to help shield your hard-earned wealth from the shockwaves of political upheaval. So call our friends at Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit. Help protect your wealth now with Advantage Gold. Again, 800-900-8000 for your free investment kit. And remember, tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for up to $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
When the going gets tough, a tough get. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
We have American Muslims for Palestine. These are radical groups. Radical groups. We have CAIR, a Hamas front group. Students for Justice in Palestine, a Hamas front group. Muslim American Society of Minnesota, a radical organization. We have these Jew-hating imams, America-hating imams. This guy Bazian, in my view, professor, and we have this guy, Assad Zaman. I know it all sounds Greek, but you understand what I'm saying. Walz reportedly opened the caravan and used his remarks to announce the formation of an office to address Islamophobia in Minnesota. Bazian is also the founder of the anti-Israel American Muslims for Palestine, which is under investigation, I just told you, in Virginia, for suspicions if its finances are tied to terrorist activity. This is a friggin' vice presidential candidate! Then we have the anti-Semitic histories of CAIR and Students for Justice in Palestine, again, with ties to overseas groups. They've been well documented, especially since October 7. We have the executive director, Nihad Awad, who was in that meeting in Philadelphia to form CAIR, a Hamas front group. He's still roaming around the country, free. He said he was happy to see people breaking the siege on October 7. Israel does not have the right to self-defense. These organizations have been harassing Jews at colleges and universities, helping to organize the Hitler Youth in the street. Walz came out last week. He hosted the extremist Islamist imam Assad Zaman, who pushes a pro-Hitler film on his website, as the Washington Examiner reports. Shares Hamas press releases. Can you imagine this? You don't have to. It's reality. In a statement October 7, the Muslim American Society of Minnesota affirmed its unwavering support, I quote, for the Palestinian people in their struggle against the Israeli occupation. Called for the U.S. to pressure Israel to cease those atrocities many days before Israel even entered Gaza. And Walz gave this organization, the Muslim American Society of Minnesota, $100,000 of state tax dollars, and they are set to receive another $25,000. Jonathan Karl, what do you think about that? What about the self-hating Jews in the media? What do you think about that? CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, we know you don't give a damn. You didn't give a damn about the extermination of 6 million European Jews. You won't give a damn about this, that's for sure. The same media that continue to this day to provide reports provided to them by the so-called Hamas Health Ministry. Have they ever gone over there and visited the Hamas Health Ministry? No. There is no such thing. I have millions and millions of people listening to this program. They say this election's going to come down to 40, 50, 100,000 people in a handful of states. Well, what about Kamala? What's it have to do with her? She chose him. She chose him. They pretended they were looking at this Jewish governor of Pennsylvania. Now, he's an a-hole. Don't get me wrong. I don't like the guy in the least. But that's not why they overlooked him. They overlooked him because all these radical, anti-Semitic, America-hating, Jew-hating organizations are now entrenched, enshrined within the Democrat Party base. They're the zealots that they need. They're in the base. They're in Congress. Kamala Harris. I spent hours on this today, so let me read you some things. Kamala Harris defends Ilhan Omar after backlash to Israel comments. March 6, 2019. SF Gate, San Francisco Gate. Shortly after House Democrats announced they would indefinitely postpone a vote on a resolution condemning anti-Semitism, Senator Kamala Harris of California put out a statement in support of Ilhan Omar, whose controversial comments in Israel were believed to have spurred the drafting of the resolution. Remember her, the Benjamins? And she said a lot worse than that. And she said a lot worse than that. No specific order. Here we have Kamala Harris, campus protesters of a Gaza war, quote, showing what human emotion should be. And then she said, no, I'm not talking about the extreme. They were all extremists, you idiot. This is her mindset. This is her ideology. This is their thinking. Editor's notes. Jerusalem Post. Harris as president could be a disaster for Israel and the Jewish people. More. Report. Kamala Harris has extensive past ties to radical group CAIR. Joel Pollack, Breitbart. Extensive. A report by Robert Spencer at Front Page magazine. In 2007-8, CAIR was named an unindicted co-conspirator in the Tenor financing trial. The Holy Land Foundation led the FBI to continue its work with the organization. In 2009, a federal judge ruled the ties of CAIR with Hamas, the Palestinian terror organization, ample evidence to establish the ties. The United Arab Emirates labored CAIR, the UAE labored CAIR, a terrorist organization in 2014, a decision the Obama administration opposed. And yet it's entrenched with the Democrat Party. Now, this has been known for years, but no one has cared. Back in 2020, the Washington Free Beacon reported, as California's Attorney General, then as U.S. Senator Harris forged a relationship with CAIR, one of the nation's top anti-Israel groups and advocates for boycotts of the Jewish state. And after Hamas massacre of October 7, the matters even more. CAIR, the Free Beacon added, advised Harris on community issues during her time in California politics. She later offered the group her gratitude and admiration. In a 2018 personal letter to the group, she specifically, Hassam Aloush, executive director at CAIR's LA office, praised Harris in 2015 for including the group in an interfaith meeting with law enforcement officials. Harris, he said, exemplified leadership by vowing to tackle Islamophobia at a time when the state's Jewish institutions were facing threats. But that's not all. The Beacon wrote, as California's top cop, Harris partnered with local CAIR officials and relied on them to advise her about community matters. 2015, she hosted CAIR for an interfaith community event following a deadly terrorist attack in San Bernardino. 2016, as she ran for the Senate, CAIR's Political Action Committee donated $1,750 to boost her campaign. That may not be much in the larger scheme of things, but imagine the outcry if Donald Trump had taken a small fraction of that amount of money from the Ku Klux Klan. Front Page Magazine's Daniel Greenfield reports that second gentleman Doug Imhoff, Harris's husband, always Jewish, don't you know, worked for a law firm that represented radical anti-Israel interests and pro-Palestinian groups, including Al Jazeera. And Greenfield notes the newspaper noted that Imhoff, the husband of Harris, was a partner at DLA Piper, whose lobbying clients had included the governments of Afghanistan and Bahrain, as well as the Qatari government-funded Al Jazeera. Think I'm making this stuff up? Democrats have long used Douglas Imhoff, Joel writes, Kamala's husband, who was raised in a Jewish family, as a defense against critics noting her troubling political views. But Imhoff's law firm connections raised their own issues, both apart from his wife and perhaps reflective of her. Kamala's husband did not personally represent terrorist supporters or sponsors, terrorist-linked entities during his time at DLA Piper. One of his clients at a previous law firm was, however, an arms dealer who was since charged and pled guilty. But he benefited from the firm that did. And CAIR participated in shaping the Biden administration's so-called anti-Semitism strategy. You believe that? You believe that? It's quite amazing. More. Kamala's national security advisor probed over ties to Iranian influence network. The Free Beacon. Tom Cotton and Elise Stefanik, two heroes, launched a probe into Vice President Kamala Harris' national security advisor over his ties to an Iranian government influence network. In a letter to Harris, Cotton and Stefanik asked the presumptive Democratic nominee to provide information about her advisor, Phil Gordon's connections to Miss Ariane Tabatabai, a senior Department of Defense official who is reportedly involved in an Iranian government operation to expand Tehran's soft power in the United States. I'm quoting the letter. Gordon, the letter notes, co-authored at least 3 opinion pieces with Tabatabai that argued against sanctions on the Iranian regime. She was outed last year as an alleged member of the Iranian-run influence network that reported back to Tehran's foreign ministry. This is Gordon's connections. Now, Gordon is Harris's national security advisor. Gordon's connections to Tabatabai are fueling concerns about a 2024 election. Gordon is likely to play a central national security role in a Harris White House. And his connections to pro-Tehran advocacy groups suggest that renewed diplomacy with Iran will be a top foreign policy priority for Harris if she's elected. Cotton and Stefanik are primarily concerned about Gordon's access to classified information and so forth. In March 2020 article, Gordon and Tabatabai claimed continued sanctions on Iran would create catastrophe in the Middle East. And Cotton and Stefanik wrote in their letter, in another piece, according to the lawmakers, Gordon and Tabatabai wrote sanctions could lead to new Iranian efforts to lash out with attacks on its neighbors and so forth. In other words, the Iranian sympathizers, if not special pleaders. This is her national security advisor. Here we have neo-Nazism, Islamism. Who is Imam Assad Zaman, hosted by Tim Walz. We just spoke about him. Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's new running mate, hosted an extremist Islamist imam on many occasions, the Washington Examiner writes. 3 times in 2019, once in 2020, again in 2023, among others. And the Washington Free Beacon found last week will also appeared alongside an anti-Semitic scholar at a conference called Challenging Islamophobia, hosted by CAIR in 2019, as we discussed. Democratic vice presidential candidate Tim Walz speaks during a campaign rally. They have photos of this. Now, the Anti-Defamation League corroborated this, telling the Washington Examiner that Imam Zaman has a troubling history, they're quoting, playing into classic anti-Jewish themes and justifying violence against Israel. And yet this is Tim Walz's guy. This is a buddy. He's given $100,000 in Minnesota tax dollars. Zaman asked Democratic California Congresswoman Katie Porter to reaffirm the right of Palestinians to defend themselves after she condemned the attack. It goes on and on. I'm about halfway through. You don't have to be Jewish to be saying to yourself, oh my God. Oh my God. Now you know why the media do not want you to know Kamala Harris or Tim Walz. While they're busy waving shiny objects in your face. Busy with their lies, their spin, and their propaganda. Many of the same elements are in the American media today at CNN and MSNBC and the Times and the Post and all the rest of it. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
We're living in unprecedented times. Every day we're seeing new breaking news. In fact, we're seeing challenges like we've never seen before. So in times like these, you need a solid foundation for your finances. And that's where diversification and gold come in. Gold has always been one of the ultimate safe havens in times of turmoil. When it comes to gold, I only trust one company, Advantage Gold. They're a 5-star American company that I recommend to you. They're experts in precious metals and specialize in helping Americans protect their money with gold and silver. You can even use an existing retirement savings with zero fees. Call Advantage Gold today, 800-900-8000, and they'll send you a free gold investment kit to help you get started. Tell them Mark Levin sent you to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Help protect your wealth now with Advantage Gold. Call 800-900-8000 for your free gold investment kit, 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I want you to keep something in mind as I go through all this. And there'll be more. There's a lot more. Kamala Harris had no problem with CAIR. She has no problem with the Muslim American Society of Minnesota. She has no problem with Students for Justice in Palestine. She has no problem with any of these vile organizations. She has no problem with them. But she had a problem sitting and listening to the Prime Minister of Israel. She made a big drama move, wanted everybody to know she wasn't going to be there as Vice President of the United States and President of the Senate. She's reached out to these organizations with ties to Hamas, ties with foreign countries, that push Hitler, that push Jewish blood libels. She pushes Jewish blood libels when it comes to Israel fighting in Gaza. She demands a ceasefire. She demands that Israel surrender. She rarely ever condemns the leadership in Iran. She has surrounded herself with special pleaders and appeasers to the... Not so loud, Mr. Producer. To the Islamists. It's outrageous. But she can't meet with the Prime Minister of Israel. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Obviously, I can't repeat the first hour, but the first hour is always available. The entire show is always available on the podcast. It's available on YouTube. It's available on marklevinshow.com, the mothership website, where we archive up to 4 years of our broadcast. And within an hour or two at the end of this program, if you want to go back and listen to something, it's right there. And if you want to share it with somebody as well. And remember, my goal here is to give you the kind of information that's needed that the propaganda press, that the Pravda, Al Jazeera, American media are simply not going to reveal to people. So you can be the Thomas Paines, and you can be the Paul Reveres. You can be the great heroes of our time, and we're going to need you. This election's in 83 or 84 days. You need to spread the word, and I'm trying to provide you with the information to spread. Okay? So you can link to it. You can cut and paste it. There's many, many ways for you to provide it to family and friends and coworkers and colleagues and neighbors and so forth, and to try and persuade them to vote the right way. That is, for Donald Trump and against this. And I remind you, the kind of mindset, the Islamist mindset, is the mindset that wants to destroy the United States of America and has attacked the United States of America with grave consequences. It's the kind of mindset that is now trying to destroy the very existence of Israel. It's destroying our universities and colleges. It's destroying our streets. Hate crimes are through the roof. This is being imported into our country. Imported into our country by the Democrat Party through open borders policies. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and now Kamala Harris and her radical sidekick, this clown, this fool, this fraud, and this phony Walz. These are dangerous times, and they're going to be 100 times more dangerous if we don't wake up our fellow Americans. Because the media and the Democrat Party, they're going to lie. She's going to put out her economic plan Friday. It'll be a lie. I will predict right now it'll be Marxist class warfare populism. Marxist class warfare populism. That's what it's going to be. You can have everything you want if we just take from those who are successful, take from our industries, take from our businesses, take from anybody who earns more than $12 and redistribute it. And what happens? What happens? They drive up the cost of food. They drive up the cost of energy. They're not going to give up. They're not going to give up on the climate change movement. That is, to purposely shrink the economy. They're not going to give up on that. Why? That gives them power. That gives them control. Now let's go on with Kamala Harris. I've already laid out a devastating case against her when it comes to her hate Israel, her pro-Islamist, and yes, anti-Semitic agenda. Kamala Harris has named Nasrina Barzai as her liaison to the Muslim and Arab voters, despite Barzai's record battling pro-Israel and Jewish students, and the fact that she was reportedly questioned after 9/11. I don't know what that's all about. But Harris' campaign is hiring her to lead outreach to Muslim and Arab voters, according to a campaign official who shared details of the plan with NBC News, a move focused on the key constituency that soured on Joe Biden over his support of Israel. Isn't that a joke? Now, Barzai worked in Harris's White House office until July as a policy advisor on Muslim, Arab, and Gaza-related issues, as well as so-called reproductive rights, voting, and democracy. The campaign official said she will cover the same broad portfolio on the campaign. Her family came to the U.S. as refugees from Afghanistan in the mid-'80s. Her views are so radical that Daniel Greenfeld of Front Page magazine reports Well, that she's radical. Let's see. That is in Breitbart. Joe Pollack. Washington Free Beacon. An inspiration to me always. What? Meet Kamala Harris's radical pastor. After President Joe Biden stepped aside, Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee. Chuck Ross writes, she called her longtime pastor, Amos Brown. We mentioned this. She said to me, Pastor, I called because I want you to pray for me, this country, the race I am attending to run for president. Now, he's the longtime pastor of the San Francisco Third Baptist Church. They've known each other for nearly a quarter of a century. The two have remained close throughout her vice presidency. In July 2023, Harris posted a picture of the two on the vice president's Instagram account. Less well known is Brown's history of radical anti-American remarks that have elicited blowback even from Nancy Pelosi at a memorial service for victims of the 9/11 terror attacks held just 6 days after al-Qaeda murdered nearly 3,000 Americans. Pastor Brown used the occasion to point the finger at the United States in remarks that, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, set a lot of people's teeth on edge and left politicians stunned. America, is there anything you did to set up this climate? He asked the audience. Oh, America, what did you do? America, what did you do 2 weeks ago when I stood at the World Conference on Racism? When you wouldn't show up, he continued. That's the UN World Conference Against Racism. Coming from the UN, that's pretty sick. His diatribe jarred the audience. This is Kamala Harris's pastor. What do you think of that? It's unclear when Harris joined Brown's church. What does that matter? She knows what he is. She joined it anyway. At the time, Harris was working as the San Francisco city attorney with Louise Renee ahead of the 2003 DA campaign. But his remarks caused a stir in San Francisco, drawing newspaper headlines, so she was aware of him. His radical politics have also veered into anti-Semitism. He served as a delegate at the 2001 United Nations World Conference Against Racism held in Durban, South Africa, which is a horribly anti-Semitic country. Best known for equating Zionism with racism and apartheid. The U.S. and Israel walked out of the conference over that resolution, expressing dismay that a conference ostensibly devoted to combating hatred had devolved into a hate fest. And some scholars have traced the roots of the anti-Israel BDS movement to a meeting in Tehran among NGOs to prepare for a Durban conference, which eventually issued a declaration calling for the complete isolation of Israel. Brown's radicalization has also been on public display, and it goes on. So why would Harris have this guy as her closest pastor? Because she agrees with him. Look, folks, she can't disagree with all these people. She decides who she wants to be around. She decides. She's around all these people. New York Post, John Levin. Kamala Harris, July 27, 2024, has long line of anti-Israel statements. Following Hamas's October 7 terrorist attacks, her snub of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu was only the latest in a long line of anti-Israel statements and sentiments Harris has offered since the Hamas terrorist attack on October 7. Weeks after Hamas, the elected government Gaza, massacred 1,200 Israelis, took 200 more as hostages, committed mass rape and beheaded babies, Harris made it known she was demanding that Israel pump the brakes on operations that could cause civilian casualties. We believe Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. She said this on December 2nd, before just weeks after Israel even entered Gaza. Less than a month after October 7, Harris spoke approvingly of rampaging pro-Hamas college students, telling reporters, "I do understand their concerns. I will never attempt to stifle or silence young people from expressing their concerns." When Israel said they needed to destroy Hamas at their stronghold in Rafah, which is what they're doing now, Harris was reliably against that, telling ABC it was not logistically possible. And she knew this because she had studied the maps. She studied the maps. When a deranged professor told Harris on October 17, 10 days after Israel was attacked, that the United States and Israel were committing genocide, Harris responded by saying, "I appreciate you raising the subject, and I appreciate your leadership." She was squishy on Israel when she was a senator as well, voting against federal anti-BDS legislation, which passed the chamber overwhelmingly in 2019. Yes. More on this dynamic anti-Semitic duo. Newsmax. Tim Walz endorsed radical Ilhan Omar. We're still waiting for those results in her primary today, where a Democrat liberal is taking her on because he thinks she's nuts too. Omar with the Benjamins. Omar with the attacks on Jews in our own country, the United States, endorsed by Walz. Newly minted Democrat vice presidential candidate Tim Walz previously endorsed Omar. In July 2020, as governor, Walz posted, "Ilhan Omar never runs away from a challenge. Her determination inspires those around her to pursue their passion in the face of adversity. She's quickly established herself as a progressive leader in Congress." He added in reference to all the Democrats he endorsed that year, she was on the list. As a former member of Congress representing Minnesota's 1st Congressional District, I know exactly how difficult this job can be. Additionally, the incredible leadership that each of these members has displayed on the national stage during their time in Congress, they have done an equally impressive job staying grounded in their home districts. At the time, Omar, a member of the Squad, a group of Marxists, was challenged in her primary by 4 other Democrats, but Walz chose to throw his support behind her. Along with Rashida Tlaib, Omar was one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress, but has become known for her anti-Israel sentiments. More than that, her Jew-hating sentiment, such as her infamous, "It's about the Benjamins, baby." That's about Jews, not about Israel. Despite efforts by Democrats and some media pundits to rebrand Walz as a folksy Midwestern centrist, he's already been called out by Republicans for his handling of the Black Lives Matter riots of 2020 in Minneapolis, his firm embrace of the horrendous COVID-19 lockdowns in that state, his steadfast allegiance to the transgender lobby, and some moderates accused Harris of capitulating to the hard left in the Democrat Party, and by avoiding more moderate and Israel-supporting Governor Josh Shapiro. Isn't that exactly what she's done? The feelings of support appeared mutual, with Omar posting just on past Tuesday, "Congratulations to our next Vice President, Tim Walz. Our North Star governor has signed universal school meals, paid family and sick leave, marijuana legalization, protection for reproductive rights in the law, bringing Minnesota nice to the ticket." Yeah. Gender surgery and medical changes to children without parental notification. Yeah, that's really joyous. This is the joyous ticket. Now, this is a very, very dark ticket. Very, very, very dark ticket. It's a ticket full of haters. It's a ticket really surrounded by lowlifes, the worst of the worst in our society, who have belief systems, who have designs on this country which are horrendous for everybody. I'm not even done. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk. So does this sound like a duo that you would vote for, America? No, it doesn't, does it? And there's a lot more. How come the New York Times and the Washington Post, CNN and MSNBC, NBC, ABC, and CBS, how come the big corporate broadcasting platforms, Time Warner, Comcast, Bezos, why are they all concealing this from you? Why are they concealing this from you? Well, a lot of them have interests in Qatar, a lot of them have interests in some of the Arab oil countries, but that's not it alone, is it? Because the Democrat Party rewards and punishes. You see what they've tried to do with Elon Musk. Elon Musk voted for Obama. I always thought he was a big lib. Turns out now he's not, because after a while, no matter how smart you are, no matter how rich you are, if you actually open your eyes and open your mind and see what's going on around you, you change. But if you're a self-serving, self-promoting grifter who can never have enough and relies on government to punish your opposition, whether it's political or economic, and to strengthen your position, whether it's political or economic, you throw in with the Marxist Islamists. There are many corporations that threw in with the Third Reich, and they were rewarded wildly. They could pick up the phone and the government would put so-and-so out of business or help you on a contract or whatever was necessary. It's the combination of government, that is, government with the corporation, the corporatists. These are not capitalists. These are not capitalists. These are so-called corporate executives who are in part politicians. Now, you can see some of this in our own country. If you're a hedge fund investor or a Silicon Valley investor, or you have a major corporation or a conglomerate of corporations, an oligopoly of sorts, and you rely on the government, the vast majority of such individuals are going to vote Democrats, support Democrats, and promote Democrats. If you run an entertainment company, it's the rare entertainment company, it's the rare broadcast company like Fox that almost stands alone, but the others throw in. Hollywood is nothing more than an appendage of these major corporations that own these companies. I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, America's tyranny hunter. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Here's Tim Walz in 2018 at the Minnesota Muslim American Society, which is a hardcore extremist group that he's giving money to, taxpayer money, Minnesotans. He called this Hitler-promoting Imam Assad Zaman a master teacher. Cut one, go.
I would like to, first of all, say thank you to Imam. I am a teacher, so when I see a master teacher, I know it. And over the time we've spent together, one of the things I've had the privilege of is seeing the things in life through the eye of a master teacher to try and get the understanding.
Now this, ladies and gentlemen, come on. You see the standard they hold Donald Trump to, who as president was the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the Oval Office, bar none. And they try and wrap this Nick Fuentes around his throat, who he has denounced. Same with his actions in minority communities, whether it's black communities and other communities. His record is one of trying to increase progress, growth, prosperity in all communities. He hasn't reached out to the Klan. He hasn't, you have to have people like Jake Tapper and Joe Biden who try and create this scenario with Charlottesville. And it's an amazing thing when you consider Joe Biden is, in fact, a man of racism and segregation who's made more racist comments in his lifetime than almost any other human being. That if he had succeeded, little black kids would not be going to school with little white kids. And to look at this party, just remember Kamala Harris was more than happy to run with him as her running mate. And so whenever you bring these things up, the immediate comeback, but Trump this, Trump that, they will not stand on their own 2 feet and defend this. So they lie, they divert, or they censor. He is praising a man who praises Adolf Hitler. He is praising a man who is a Jew hater. He is praising a man whose ties to the most extremist of the extreme. Of course he knows it. Eric Holder knew about Tim Walz when he cleared him for Kamala Harris. When Donald Trump says, if you're Jewish and you vote for Harris-Walz, you're out of your mind, you need to be crazy. Again, he speaks the truth. It's something I've been saying. You're going to be voting for somebody and with people who are voting for somebody who believe you shouldn't exist. This is the best the Democrat Party can do? This is the best they can do? These are the candidates they're presenting America with? And you Democrats out there, you didn't even choose her to be your presidential candidate. You didn't choose Walz to be your vice presidential candidate. You have no obligation to them. You have no allegiance to them. When my brothers and sisters at Fox say, why won't she speak out? Why won't the media say? This is why. Because Kamala Harris is a Marxist Islamist. That's what she is. No borders. Don't say radical Islam terrorism. Don't say illegal alien. The hell with women's sports. On and on. Down the list. It's the truth. It is the truth. I'll give you another example. I'll just pull as a footnote. Kamala Harris said we should close the immigration detention centers. She said she'll do it on day one. I want you to listen to this, and then I want to tell you what she means by that. Cut 2, Mr. Producer, go.
When you become president, would you be committing to close immigration detention centers?
Absolutely, on day one. On day one.
Let me tell you what that means. That means no detention centers, there's no vetting. The reason you have detention centers are people coming here and we don't know who they are. Men bringing little girls or little boys across the border. They have to go to detention centers. They have to be separated. We have to make sure that they're not sex trafficking these little kids, that they actually are who they say they are. And unfortunately, it's not so simple as looking it up in a computer because they're not in a database, particularly if they come from communist China or Syria or Iran or wherever. What Kamala Harris says is no detention centers. Right into your neighborhoods. Right into your neighborhoods. That means no vetting. No vetting whatsoever. No detention centers. No border. Nothing. This is how terrorists come into the United States. Why do we have to wait? So we look back and ask why we have another 9/11? We know they're setting this up for another 9/11. Look at what they're doing. Of course the enemy wants to kill us. How do we know? They tried. They want to assassinate only one candidate for president, Donald Trump. And they want to destroy our country. How many more hits do we have to take? Have we forgotten 9/11? This woman says in 2019 she's a full-grown adult. She's supposed to be a tough prosecutor against a convicted felon. That she will close detention centers on day one. Are we now supposed to believe, well, now she's changed her mind? No, she hasn't, even if she says she has. She's a liar. She's pathological. She's an ideologue. She's an extremist. Take her at face value. That's who she is. That's what she is. She's not a mumbler because she has a speech impediment. She's a mumbler because she's not sure how to present herself to we the people without losing her base. That's why she talks nonsense. They'll have a scripted economic policy that will come out Friday. It will read like a Marxist class warfare populist document. Get the rich, tax this, Trump that. This is all static. This is all fog. You don't embrace a Hamas front group, CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, unless you want to. You don't embrace Students for Justice in Palestine, another one, unless you want to. You don't embrace the offshoots of the Muslim Brotherhood unless you want to. You don't have open borders where terrorists, criminals, fentanyl, enslavers, pedophiles come across our border. You don't have a border like that unless you want a border like that. She wasn't border czar. But by God, she was vice president. She's still vice president. Whether they call her border czar is of no consequence. She's the number 2 in the executive branch. She's the number 2. That's what matters. No detention centers. So where are these people going to go? I don't know. Ask the people in New York City where they go. Ask the 46-year-old woman who was thrown to the ground last night and raped by 2 illegal immigrants. One who's raped before but was let out, and whose boyfriend was held back with a pipe. Ask them what they think of no detention centers. Ask the people in communities throughout this country, particularly in the inner cities, where they've lost their soccer fields and baseball fields, where they've lost their community centers and their health centers, where they've lost their schools. Ask them what they think about no detention centers. The detention centers become your streets. They become your neighborhoods. They become your communities. They're all around you. And who are these people? We don't know. By God, isn't it the government's job to protect us, we the people? Apparently not. And whatever you do, don't call them illegal aliens. That's offensive. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Did you read the piece today in the media? Some of the media. The level of granting of citizenship is at a record high right now. Did you see that, Mr. Producer? They're moving through people for citizenship at breakneck speed. That means they're cutting corners. They're pushing them through as fast as possible, under the radar. That should be a marquee sign to Americans what's going on here, so they can vote. But as fast as they can. It's now reached record heights. See, the government can do what the government wants to do. And so, I'm not saying legalization. I'm saying citizenship is being given out at breakneck speed right now. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk. Well, the New York Times is very proud of what's taking place. Our friends at Breitbart caught it. Simon Kent, the federal government is approving U.S. citizenship requests at the quickest rate in a decade, dispensing with a backlog attributed to the coronavirus pandemic and a tighter approval regime that reached its zenith under former President Trump, says a report in the New York Times. Naturalization ceremonies typically spike ahead of an election, the New York Times report makes clear, before detailing the rise in approval numbers for citizenship that also confers with it full voting rights. Immigration analyst Zhao Wang, chief executive of Boundless, a company that reportedly uses government data to analyze immigration trends while offering services to migrants who seek professional help in navigating the application process, told the New York Times the rush comes with commensurate outcomes. Now, ready for this? You sitting down? If you're in your car, you should be. The surge in naturalization efficiency isn't just about clearing backlogs. It's potentially reshaping the electorate merely months before a pivotal election. Every citizenship application should be a vote that decides Senate races or even the presidency. You know, when I used to talk about this years ago, they accused me of replacement theory. And so the media and their left-wing goons in the Democrat Party and these NGOs, oh, you're a racist, replacement theory. It's not a theory. They just admitted to it. The surge in naturalization efficiency isn't just about clearing backlogs. It's potentially reshaping the electorate merely months before a pivotal election. The New York Times report goes on to set out at under 5 months, application processing speed is now on a par with 2013 and 2014. About 3.3 million immigrants have become citizens during Biden's time in office, with less than 2 months to go before the close of the 2024 fiscal year. 3.3 million. After taking office in 2021, Biden issued an executive order that sought to reverse former President Trump's hardline immigration agenda, and so forth and so on. Among other steps, the order called for action to substantially reduce current naturalization processing times. The Biden regime also shortened the naturalization application to 14 pages from 20. You see what's going on here? Made it easier for low-income people to qualify for a discount. I got to discuss this more with you after the top of the hour. This is not a hit and run thing. This is, even though they mean it to be, open borders, the radical extremist elements, closing detention centers. She wants to get rid of ICE, remember? Defund them. This is revolution by immigration. Let me repeat that so all the others can say it. This is revolution by immigration. It's well underway. It's in its latter stages. Revolution by immigration. Maybe somebody at the 5 can mention that. Our power hour is next. Don't go away.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. The importance of this New York Times story isn't the propaganda and the spin, which is always their game. Let me tell you something. If you have been a subscriber to the New York Times from 1939 to 1944, you wouldn't have had a clue that Hitler was exterminating millions of Jews in Europe. There were disparate stories here and there, most of them in the middle or back pages of the newspaper. No glaring, bold headlines. No first-hand accounts, of which there were many. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you were a subscriber to the New York Times, which was a Jewish-owned newspaper, you would not have known about the Holocaust or the extent of the genocide that was taking place, you wouldn't have had a clue. And we sit here and we expect that same media corporation that committed an act of really unimaginable inhumanity. That was their job. Unimaginable inhumanity. To now tell us the truth about an election, about Israel, about Kamala Harris, about Joe Biden, about anything? And then you have people like Maggie Haberman and others who are so proud to be employees of such a blood-soaked, unconscionable corporate enterprise. You know, people told the oil company, or the pharmaceutical company, this guy. The media companies are the worst. Because under the camouflage of a free press, they don't promote freedom or knowledge or information or debate. They did their best to conceal the Holocaust. And now we expect them to report the truth about the anti-Semites and Jew haters in the Democrat Party, or more broadly, the American haters in the Democrat Party, or what they're doing to this country. This New York Times article was not intended to give up the ghost, as they say, but it did. The surge in naturalization efficiency, that is, giving citizenship, isn't just about clearing backlogs, says Ji Wang, chief executive of Boundless. It's potentially reshaping the electorate merely months before a pivotal election. Quote, unquote. Every citizenship application, he says, could be a vote that decides Senate seats or even the presidency. And so the mad rush is on by the Biden regime to get people's citizenship. The mad rush is on. And our federal offices all over the country hand out registration forms to people, particularly people who are seeking benefits from the government, for which the Democrat Party is well known. 3.3 million immigrants have become citizens during Joe Biden's time in office, with less than 2 months to go before the close of the 2024 election. The change in speed can also be traced back to the last change in the occupant of the White House. This has been their goal. This has been their purpose. We've told you so. You've known so. Open borders. They don't care how many people are killed. They don't care how many women are raped or sold into sex slavery, because the numbers are astronomical. How many children wind up in the porn industry, and on and on and on. These stories about women being raped and brutalized and children being killed and raped. You notice it hasn't changed a single policy in the Democrats. They just lie. I don't know why conservatives, even on conservative networks, can't respond to the line. What about this bipartisan legislation that the Republicans opposed? Don't you have, folks, 4 or 5 or 6 points you can raise? I did it on Life, Liberty, and Levin 2 weekends ago. You can, or 3. You can explain it. Because it enshrined all of Joe Biden's executive orders. It would have made it impossible for President Trump to undo them. Without legislation, that would be filibustered in the Senate. Why is that so hard to say? Unbelievable. And so, you have 3.3 million new voters. More to come. And you know who Biden and the Democrats expect them to vote for, the credit that they expect to receive. You see, the guy says it. He says it better than I've ever said it. Reshaping the electorate. Years ago, when I was a contributing editor at National Review, many years ago, I wrote a piece. I've looked for it. I can't find it on the internet. I wrote a piece about immigration, and I was called, I think, by the Wall Street Journal editorial page, a restrictionist. You see, the Wall Street Journal editorial page is about the Republican ruling class in Wall Street. That's what it represents. That's why it hates Trump. Begrudgingly will try and nudge him here or there, but in the end, if he loses, it's your fault, it's my fault. They're so brilliant, they had all the great ideas. And I've explained this before, many years ago, when Robert Bartley, who's a good man, was the editor over there, instead of Paul Gigot. I know his name's Gigot. He knows my name's Levin. He calls me Levin. I knew him decades ago. In any event, Gigot and his boss, they wrote an editorial. And you can look it up yourself. It's out there. Arguing for a new amendment to the Constitution that's only 5 words. Thou shalt have open borders. That was the position of the Wall Street Journal. I guess Joe Biden listened. They've never written an editorial saying they were wrong. They've never written an editorial apologizing. Nothing. They act like they never said it. There's other people, and I'm not going to embarrass them, who used to attack Governor Pete Wilson, who was a great governor of California. They called him a restrictionist, too, because he wanted to secure California's borders. He did not believe in open immigration. Well, there were individuals, many of whom you know, who viciously attacked him. Viciously attacked him. For being a, what do they call it? Xenophobe, I guess is the word. A xenophobe. He wasn't a xenophobe. I'm not a xenophobe either. I am a restrictionist, but I'm not a xenophobe. I said I'm proudly a restrictionist. What's the problem? Do I favor immigration? Yes, if it's orderly and all the rest of it. But not open borders, not what's going on here. And neither did Pete Wilson. So they trashed him too. And there were others among us. To their credit, National Review has never been an open borders entity. Bill Buckley wasn't. Rich Lowry isn't. Cato Byrne wasn't. God, do I miss her. Wall Street Journal editorial always was. As were some in the Republican Party, many of whom had been former Democrats. And so Pete Wilson was trash. Pete Wilson was a great governor. He's a fine man, wonderful man, has a wonderful wife. Met them about a year ago again at the Reagan Library when my book came out. The surge in naturalization efficiency isn't just about clearing backlogs. It's potentially reshaping the electorate merely months before a pivotal election. It's what it's always been about. That's why whatever death mayhem comes, the Democrat Party, just like their hero, the New York Times, with their New York Times Moscow correspondent, Walter Durante, saying of Stalin, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. That came from him, the New York Times. Well, you got to break a few eggs to reshape the electorate, quote unquote, in the New York Times. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
By the way, NBC News, Trump's plan to quell protests, deport pro-Hamas radicals. NBC News thinks that's controversial. But importing pro-Hamas radicals, That apparently is not controversial on NBC News. Anyway, nobody knows the media better than our friend Joe Concha. He's got a fantastic new book out called Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. Joe Concha, I think what we're seeing today is worse than anything we've ever seen. Am I wrong about that?
Disgusting gaslighting, Mark, and thanks for having me. I mean, this is Soviet Pyongyang kind of stuff that we're seeing as far as this media that's gone. They used to be under the guise that they're objective, they're left-leaning, but overall, the Tim Russerts, the Peter Jennings of the world, you could accept them because at least they kind of tried to do their job objectively, particularly Russert, who I had respect for. But now there's no one like that left. It's all about we need to defeat Donald Trump. We need to get Kamala Harris over the finish line, and we could allow her to change every policy position that she has, including taking Trump's I mean, this is unbelievable. The tax on tips, now it's her idea, apparently, or the Time magazine cover where, she looks like a Vita. It doesn't matter. This is propaganda in a country that's supposed to have a free press. Instead, it's just a full court press on defeating Donald Trump.
And we don't have a free press. We have a press that is free to operate, but that doesn't make it a free press in the sense of substance. We have a right to vote, but don't we have a right to vote with information and knowledge? Isn't that the point, Joe?
Well, isn't that funny, Mark, that we have a right to vote? Because this candidate in Kamala Harris has not received one vote, despite when she ran for president in 2020, didn't receive one vote because she didn't get to Iowa. And now, as a Democratic nominee, didn't receive one vote. So, yeah, I guess only one side does the whole voting thing. And now you have a major party nominee who, for 24 days, has not taken one question of substance. And the only thing that she's offered up is, maybe I'll schedule an interview by the end of the month, which means you will not hear from her until after Labor Day, into September, after early voting started. This is John Fetterman 2.0 all over again. You remember he avoided taking any tough questions at all, avoided debating Dr. Oz before that Senate race over in Pennsylvania until a couple of days before the election. Then he melts down during the debate because obviously he did not have the cognitive ability at that time. But it didn't matter because he got over the finish line. That's all this is. Run out the clock and don't talk to anybody until you absolutely have to. Fortunately, I guess there'll be two debates on ABC and NBC, but Kamala Harris is still avoiding Fox, where she'd actually get some real questions. But again, I think those debates will expose her regardless, the same way CNN and that debate exposed Joe Biden, because once you take her out of a teleprompter, out of prescriptive remarks, it is an absolute train wreck, as we have seen, because this is just not a very articulate or, quite frankly, a very smart person who could make an argument. And plus, her policy positions are completely indefensible based on what she has said then about abolishing ICE and ending fracking and sanctuary cities and ending all private health insurance and giving private health insurance to illegals and raising taxes. I could go down the line to fund the police. These are indefensible positions, and Donald Trump should and will expose that.
I hope you're right, because the media are going to work overtime. They're not going to want to happen to her what happened to Joe Biden. There's no question in my mind about that, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, the way they asked their questions with Trump, when did you stop beating your wife? And then they asked the other candidate, what's your opinion of that? He needs to Tulsi Gabbard her. Remember how Tulsi Gabbard absolutely eviscerated Kamala Harris?
Oh, yeah. July of 2019, she was the front runner at that time because she basically called Joe Biden a racist in the first primary debate. At the second debate, Tulsi Gabbard made, let's put it this way, if you remember Mike Tyson versus Michael Spinks, that thing was over in 91 seconds and her campaign never recovered. So that's exactly what Donald Trump has to do. And I agree with you. The media is not going to do their job. But at those debates, you have David Muir and you have Lester Holt. And if enough pressure is applied to them the same way it was to Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, in that, you're going to be biased, you're not going to ask any tough questions, they may almost do that just to prove that they are actual journalists and they deserve to have the evening newscasts that they have. And it doesn't even have to be tough questions. Just read back Kamala Harris's words to her and ask her to defend her current positions now, which she hasn't done at all to this point. And again, once she starts talking outside of that teleprompter, it's clean up on aisle 5, 17, 24, 28, 31, because she does not have the ability to speak extemporaneously. Mark.
Yeah. I would say, though, that we got to be a little bit careful. we ought to be a little bit careful about it, because she seems to get prepared for it's like drama school. You're prepared for your lines, you're prepared for that event, you're prepared and so forth, and they'll have her relatively prepared. I do agree with you. If it goes on long enough, the word salad will pop out, and for really two reasons. Not only is she not smart, but she's got to make sure she doesn't tick off her Hamas base while at the same time trying to reach out to the middle. She's in a bit of a pinch there, no?
Oh, completely. You're right about that. When she says she wants to end fracking, if I'm Donald Trump, I would say, but Kamala, what will that do to the environment? Because you said before that if we continue fracking, continue fossil fuels, then that will destroy the environment along with ending all offshore drilling. So what do you say to all the environmentalists that you once were in lockstep with? I mean, this is probably a very tough position for you. In other words, throw it all back at her that way. I agree with you. She will be prepared with some zingers that the media obviously will run with. But even if you look at polls now, Real Clear Politics average, Donald Trump is still slightly leading as far as you look at the swing states. And those are the only ones that matter. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. If he wins 4 of those 7 states, he wins the election. So I think that, this thing is still 50-50 with the debates probably favoring Donald Trump and conditions on the ground still favoring Donald Trump, because people still feel inflation. They still think the world's on fire. They still hate the fact that 12 million people have come through our border unvetted.
I think if he really keeps hammering away on her policy positions, on her character, which people call it flip-flop, this is a character issue, that she lies so easily. If he keeps pounding away on that, I don't see this juggernaut yet. You just pointed it out. She's not 10 points ahead or 6 points ahead or 17 ahead like Dukakis was early on with George H.W. Bush. Despite all of this, and I'm not trying to be cocky or Pollyanna about this, she still hasn't broken away. I'd like your opinion on that when we return. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
It's a great book, folks. Joe Concha's with us, Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. In fact, Joe Concha, I spent the first 2 hours of this program going at length into the ties between Harris and Walz and the most dangerous, extremist, Islamist organizations, front groups for Hamas, Hitlerian imams, and the stories are not from the so-called mainstream media. You have to read them in other places like Breitbart or Blaze or the Free Beacon. It's just contemptible what they're doing here. I mean, it's so dangerous.
I read the Free Beacon story just earlier, Mark, and at some point you can't ignore this, especially if, and I think you called it one time, and I love the quote. I was listening to your radio show. I was just driving home one night. The Paul Revere's on social media, right? Twitter is the great equalizer, right? So if enough people with enough influence start to share these stories, and it's not like, oh, well, it's a right-wing conspiracy, like COVID came from a lab, which actually probably happened. No, this is real stuff. And what it shows, because I could not understand, Mark, for the life of me, why here Kamala Harris had what is basically, I don't know if you golf, I miniature golf with my kid anyway, close enough, a 2-inch putt, right? Which is when she had to choose a vice presidential candidate to run with her. And Josh Shapiro sitting there at 65% approval in Pennsylvania, where if you listen to Nate Silver, he says the winner of Pennsylvania has a 95% chance of winning the election. And I agree with that. Maybe not 95, but you win Pennsylvania, you're probably going to win the election. And she doesn't go with Shapiro, and she goes with tampon Tim Walz instead, right? This guy who let Minneapolis burn to the ground. He's to the left of Bernie Sanders. He's a clown on the campaign trail. He also won't take questions because he's a coward, or at least his handlers are. And you don't go with Shapiro, and we know why that is. Not because Shapiro wasn't qualified, not a good speaker, all those things, because he's Jewish. And the fact that that's the case shows you why maybe now we're seeing these connections back to these Hamas-related or connected groups. This is a bigger story than I think people imagine right now, and it's only I don't think it's going to go away. At least I hope it isn't going to go away.
And, what is amazing to me is we rely on media outlets, and I've written about this at some length, others have too, like the New York Times. And I pointed out earlier in the show, Joe, If you had a subscription to the New York Times from 1939 to 1944, you would not have known the massive extermination and genocidal campaign against the European Jews by Hitler. You wouldn't have known about it. And it was owned by a Jewish family. So when Kamala Harris, and I'm not comparing her to Hitler, they do that to Trump, but when she says, look at my husband, he's Jewish, that doesn't mean a damn thing. Look at her record. Look what she says. Look who she associates with. And if you expect the New York Times to call out Kamala Harris and these Hamas connections, then you're reading the wrong newspaper.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, they have not, Mark, endorsed a Republican presidential candidate since 1956. Now, think about that for a moment. That means they said, Hubert Humphrey, that's our guy, right? Jimmy Carter against Reagan, that's our guy. Walter Mondale against Reagan, who won one state, Minnesota, his own state, and Reagan could have won that if he actually campaigned there. Mondale's our guy. Dukakis is our guy. John Kerry is our guy. I could go down the list, but they have no track or no pulse on the American people whatsoever. And maybe the reason why, because the New York Times has always had tremendous influence, particularly in Democratic circles, maybe FDR didn't move to go into World War II sooner to stop the Nazis, only until the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, obviously, because maybe he was reading the New York Times and saying, there's nothing really bad going on over in Europe. We shouldn't, and then try to save these people. So, yeah, you've been writing about that for some time. I know that, and it's just disgusting, the fact that the New York Times is owned literally by a Jewish family, and they have been running these anti-Semitic tropes for decades now.
The Washington Post, during the same period, was owned by a Jewish family, did the same damn thing. And so my point to people is this. You've got Harris now who's appointing these anti-Israel Jews around her, like her outreach person to the Jewish community, who was an Obama guy, who's been all Iran all the time. You look at Blinken. He's no great pro-Israel guy either. Or look at Bernie Sanders. He's an Islamist. He's a Marxist Islamist. They don't represent the Jewish people or the Jewish faith or anything like that, but the Democrats and their media are very, very good at this. And so I guess my point is this. They will do anything to win. Anything to win. The ends do justify the means. And as you point out in your book, the title is so apt here because it's very, very important. Progressively worse. Why today's Democrats ain't your daddy's donkeys. Where are the various moderate or even conservative Democrats? There's no Scoop Jackson. There's no Patrick Moynihan. There's nobody like that anymore, is there?
No, I mean, you probably knew Tip O'Neill because you worked in the Reagan administration, but I at least admired the fact, and I brought this up in the bookmark, that O'Neill would meet with Reagan after hours, have a bourbon or a beer or whatever, two Irishmen, and they would sit down and be like, look, I know we have our differences, and they would work out some compromises for the good of the country. They didn't agree with each other on a lot of things, but there was civility, right? And so I don't know. I mean, Tip O'Neill may not have been a very nice person, but I at least like the fact that he compromised. I was young at the time. But you look at John F. Kennedy, for example. This guy cut taxes in the middle of a recession. He believed in a strong military, stared down Khrushchev, didn't believe in racial quotas, believed in a merit-based system. And, oh, by the way, he was a war hero. That's somebody you could admire, and that's probably why he had a 70% approval rating. But now you know what the media would do to John F. Kennedy. He's an extreme MAGA Republican for all of his positions on X, Y, Z. Jimmy Carter was a pro-life president that was on the Democratic side. They're now extinct in the Democratic Party. You could find maybe one lawmaker who's pro-life as a Democrat at this point. And Bill Clinton, for all of his personal faults, at least was street smart enough to work with Newt Gingrich and declare the era of big government's over, worked on welfare reform and passed that, had a balanced budget amendment. Imagine that. Wow, we don't spend what we don't have. And we have peace and prosperity. So all those days are gone now because we have a party that's been taken over by the media, Mark. And I'll give one example around this. 2019, there's 26 Democrats running for the Democratic nomination. And CNN says, we're going to give each of you an hour on our air to do a town hall. And they're all like, great, that sounds great. But there's one catch. There's only one topic. Oh, what? The economy, immigration, foreign policy, education? No. It's the climate, and this is what they call it, the climate crisis. You can only talk about the climate and what you're going to do to stop climate change. So if you're like the guy who ran from Montana, who was the governor there, who's a Democrat, and you want to talk about trade or energy, or you want to talk about the economy, nope, you're not allowed. You have to talk about the climate crisis, because that is the only thing that CNN will allow. So I think the media, MSNBC, New York Times, you mentioned the Washington Post before, they've never endorsed a Republican presidential candidate in their history, which is quite remarkable to do. They've pushed this party in the direction that they're in now. And all these lawmakers on the left, they watch those channels, they read those papers, and they take their cues from them instead of the other way around.
You're so right, because it doesn't matter how many subscribers or viewers they have, like the Morning Joe show, which nobody gives a damn about, which has a tiny audience, and yet Joe Biden stares at that monitor during the course of that show, and they want to hear themselves talked up and so forth. So you're right, that there is this huge disconnect between the Washington, D.C., New York, L.A. media and the rest of the country, which is why it was hilarious when George Stephanopoulos announced, as soon as this guy Walz was picked, you know, he's your Midwestern values guy, did this. He said, how the hell would you know, you little jerk? And by the way, didn't he head the war room for Clinton, trying to smear all those women who accused Clinton of molesting them?
Bimbo eruptions, I believe he pushed that narrative along with Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. You know, the party of women, one ticket believes that we should keep men out of women's sports, right? That's the Republican side. The other believes we should keep tampons in boys' bathrooms. Yeah. Just to make that clear exactly where we're at with that. And you remember 2016, everybody was so shocked when Donald Trump won. To your point, like George Stephanopoulos, how would you know that Tim Walz is that folksy Midwest guy that everybody can relate to? Well, in 2016, everybody was so shocked because Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania all went to Donald Trump, supposed to be the blue wall, especially the last three states that I named. So then I went back and I looked. The Hill once did, were my old publication, which is centrist. Maybe it leans on the left. Who cares? At least we try, or we did try when I was there. They did an analysis along with me on the major newspaper endorsements that happened before that election. 59 endorsements, for major publications. 57 went to Hillary Clinton and 2 went to Donald Trump. And that got Hillary Clinton a set of steak knives and a concession speech. In other words, all those endorsements, this is how you should vote, and everybody ignored it because no one really trusts the messenger anymore.
Folks, it's a great book. It's a great book. It's already on the New York Times bestseller list, I understand. Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. It is actually quite prescient. It's absolutely relevant to what's taking place. Go to Amazon.com. It's on all my social sites. You can go there and link right to it and get it. It'll be delivered tomorrow or the next day. Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. And it's remarkable you were able to bring it up to modern times, because I know at a minimum you need a 3-month print period. And there you are. The book's relevant right up to current events. It's a great job, Joe.
Oh, thank you. I mean, got a little lucky, with Joe Biden dropping out and then Kamala Harris, as we mentioned before. The party that's going to save democracy installed a candidate that didn't receive 1 vote. So, it's well-timed. But in the end, Mark, Democrats are fully aware that they can easily and blatantly lie and get away with it because the media will only aid and abet them in that effort. And they know there's enough of the electorate not informed or gullible enough to believe them. And that's my worry. Like, do you think there's people are so distracted by they're in their phones, they're watching all these goofy videos like my 10-year-old, but she's 10, which is fine. She could do that once in a while. She's a straight A student. But do you think there's enough of the electorate that isn't paying attention and will just actually believe Kamala Harris is the next Barack Obama, or at least the next Beto O'Rourke?
Yeah, I think there is, and that's our challenge. There's really 2 types that the Democrat media is aiming for. One, those, as Rush will call them, the low-information voters, and the zealots. They want to get their zealots out, and that's what they're aiming for, but they also want to get these low-information voters out, and the way you get them out is to lie like hell about yourself and your opponent, and that's what they're working on. Look, they figure the election's going to be decided by 20, 50, 100, 150,000 votes, and that's what they're focused on.
And that's what the last couple elections have come down to, right? Just in a couple of swing states, 10,000 here, 12,000 there, 20,000 there. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. And it's an information war. And that's why I'm glad, at least, that Donald Trump appears to be going back on X, on Twitter, because you need as many platforms as possible. And we saw that last night with Elon Musk. That was a smart move. He needs to continue to do that. And I think J.D. Vance, by the way, continue to get out there, do every interview in the book, because you are infinitely smarter and much more adept than any of these folks that are interviewing you. So, I think as this campaign goes on, I think they wear down this Kamala Harris, Tim Walz fantasy that these people could actually govern.
And it's not only up to them. As I tell the 14.5 million people who come into their show every week, it's up to us. This is our country. Take the links. Take what you hear me say. Other people that you rely on say. Share it. Go around this media. This media is only there because we allow them in our lives. They don't have to be in our lives. We have the ability to communicate directly with tens of millions of people. Joe Concha, the book is Progressively Worse. You can get it on Amazon.com. God bless you, my friend. Take care of yourself.
Mark, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Let's do this again sometime.
You're a good man. We will. Take care of yourself. Boy, he's good, isn't he, Mr. Producer? Really, really good. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
By the way, I want to thank you, folks. I have the most loyal radio audience ever. And, of course, you're the smartest. Our Fox numbers on Sunday. I don't like to keep saying I was ill, but I was ill for a few days there. And so the Sunday show was a combination of past shows that are relevant, but it certainly wasn't a live show. And yet that show was the highest rated overall show on the entire day Sunday. That's because of you. It's because of your loyalty. You find this show, you find me no matter what. We have a relationship that people will never understand. Executives will never understand. Owners will never understand. PDs and GMs will never understand. I understand it. You understand it. That's all that matters. Technology makes it possible through thick and thin. Saturday, we weren't on Fox, but I just want to thank you, folks. We're going to have two fantastic shows this weekend. I can assure you of that. We'll be on 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. Fox is going to run Sunday a lot of shows covering the Democrat convention. We will be on at 10 p.m. Eastern Time after that. I'm not going to get into the Democrat convention. Ask me if well, never mind. But anyway, I hope you will watch both of those shows. So again, a little time change on Sunday. It'll be 10 p.m. Eastern Time, but Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, truckers, our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. You're kicking ass. In Israel, we've got your back, even if the government here does not. I will see you tomorrow. God bless you.